All right, what's going on, guys? Today I've got a special video for you. If you are a fan of the company Airship Syndicate or any of the games it is that they make, or any of the artists that work at Airship Syndicate, then I think you're going to enjoy this video. In this video, I'm basically going to go through and break down some of the favorite concept art and environment designs that I've come across from these artists. The reason why I'm doing this is because one of the jobs it is that I'm doing right now involves doing some concept work for a game, and while I'm still doing my comic, I'm also really expanding my understanding of design in general with these environment art jobs, and it's always something that I really wanted to do, which is to create different environments for a game. You know, I just think it's really cool, and there's so many unique challenges and opportunities to build worlds. And so one of the ways it is that we can do that is to really break down and understand like what's going on in these environment designs. And so I'm just going to flip through. This is going to be like a couple of different artists. I do have the names and their ArtStation accounts linked in the description box below. So you can go and you can check out their work if I mispronounce their name or if I don't mention them. This guy is Phil Stoltz. And see, I think each one of these artists, they all had different roles. And so a lot of these guys were working on simultaneously on the same environments and the same projects. So I'm not sure what Phil did exactly. So I'm just going to kind of make note of what it is that I see in general. And these guys credit each other in their ArtStation posts. But one of the things it is that I like about this is that a lot of level design stuff that I'm looking at, they talk a lot about like breaking up a path, right? So let's say you wanted the player to go, from this staircase from A to B, right? Now, there's numerous different ways it is that you could get the player there, but we want to get them there in an entertaining way, correct? So if the player is coming down this way, what makes it visually interesting and fun to play is kind of running them in a circle, and this circle is basically the circumference of this circle right here, and giving us an opportunity to do a little bit of platforming. I mean, maybe you have to go up here to go here in order to get to this area, and so the player is guided along the circumference of this circle, and it gives the artist a chance to really like just go all out with the designs of the environment. We can see clearly where our objective is because the lighting is hitting this area. It's hitting this area with this cool kind of light that's here, and it's also kind of creating this silhouette around the image. And I like the way that also these lights are essentially, which we can't see this one, but we can see this one. These are basically like guide stones that are keeping the player on this particular path, right? So if we think about it just from the perspective that the things it is that we don't want the player to interact with, we're not going to light them. We're not going to put something there in that environment. So another example of that is this right here is also pulling the player down this path that's moving them this way, right? So this is like a trim sheet. This guy did, Phil, he did for Darksiders. So this is the sort of thing it is that I'm going to be learning more of. Prop designs. I really dig these prop designs that Phil did. I think that they're really cool, and I love seeing these breakdowns of them because you get a sense of like how much design actually goes into these games, right? Because for example, when you look at something like this, it seems very simple, but the amount of design that is going on and the design decisions here are they're very deliberate, right? So if this was somebody who was less experienced, a beginner artist, they may not have as much of a design when it comes to this pillar with the statue on it, right? They might do something like this. And what Phil is doing is a couple of different things that you can notice right away. He's involving some storytelling because he has these cracks and these tears. And notice that none of the cracks or tears are really, or the broken parts of the statue are symmetrical, right? That's something it is that I see with a lot of beginner artists is they tend to make everything symmetrical, right? So they would maybe not damage this block as much as this guy is, but you can see that this is damaged here, it's damaged here, it's damaged here, here, and then pretty much the top of it is perfectly fine. But even here, there's no the symmetry. There's no symmetry in the statue itself. We have this diamond shape that's off to the side here, right? So all of these you could look at and you could use them as a opportunity to reflect on how the rules of big, medium, and small apply, right? You see repeating shapes. You see that same repeating shape here. You see it here, and so you get the sense that these characters were probably of the same clan, of the same group. We see more diamond shapes. Even the shield itself, you could say, is somewhat of a diamond shape. It's a very similar shape, and these circles have very similar shapes coming off of them as well. And so you have these small shapes here, or medium shapes, and then you could say these are small, and then you could say the shield itself is like a big shape, this big diamond-like shape, right? And even these spikes, you could put into that category. And again, you can see how it is that he's using something very simple as a broken arm and a head that's missing to kind of tell you a story. And he also breaks the symmetry on this side, right? So that the armor's not symmetrical on both sides. So you get an idea of like a story that may have happened here. Is this just because of the wear and tear of time? Was this like an earthquake that broke this statue up? Or did somebody, want to cut his head off, and so they broke the statue? This guy has a very strong understanding of perspective. Being able to draw things like this and being able to do them in perspective is so helpful for just drawing in general. Like if you can do this sort of stuff, then it helps everything it is that you do. It helps comics, it helps concept design, pretty much anything, so if you're trying to expand what you do with your drawing, I would highly recommend looking into props and stuff like that, right? Because this sort of stuff it's a lot of people like to do characters and that sort of thing, and so this seems less interesting to most people, but there's just as much design goes into all of this as anything else, right? Again, you see that there's a deliberate decision not to have symmetry in certain areas, right? This is bigger than this, right? This circle, this ellipse is bigger than this one. And then you also see that this candle is missing here and it's missing here, and there's one more spot for another candle, and so we have it here, and then we have this one missing, right? And so there's this kind of natural rhythm, and then there's one right in the center. So we have 3 up here and then 3 down here, but the way it is that they're placed is they're placed very thoughtfully. Again, we see these forms, these very basic cube-like forms that this guy is drawing. This is another artist. This is Philip Karlov. Yep, Philip Karlov. So we've switched to another artist. Like I said, I've got a couple of different people here. But again, you can tell that there's a breakdown. Same thing here, right? You have the small shapes, and then you have these big shapes, and you have like these kind of diamond-like shapes, right? So that's telling you that there's a visual language that's being developed, and it's being carried through all the designs, right? So this is John Stamos, and I don't think that he did the environment design, but he did do the lighting and the visual effects and stuff like that, I believe. Like I said, I've included all the links in the description box below, so we can just kind of admire this. And if you have questions about who did what, then you can always refer to those links. But you know, again, we have like this clear destination that the player is going to, right? This might be some object of interest, but we have lights and this and this. And notice, you can see there's a pattern being broken up. We have these two lamps, and then you have this crystal-like shape here. And this crystal-like shape is being framed in between this. And I've never played Darksiders, I don't know. But obviously, with this framing device around it, we clearly know this is something that they want to draw your attention to. So maybe this is like a save spot or something like that. Again, we see those same sorts of repeating patterns of the triangle diamond-like shapes. Even the thing itself is very triangular and diamond-like, right? So you have this framing device, and you could say that the walls as well, those have a framing to them, right? So it's basically holding the space of it right here. And then the other stuff over here is being pushed into darkness, right? And then of course, so we have this red here that's drawing our attention here, and we have these warm colors that's going from orange, purple, orange, and then we get to this big lighting effect here, and then what do we have? We have this other area which is also framed by this sheet here, or this broken up sheet, and then a green light. So there's this contrast. There's a contrast between the red and the green. And notice that the red is not getting as much light as it is over here, right? So there's a contrast. There's a color contrast in the environment itself. So this is another John Stamos piece. I mean, I just think this was really cool. I don't know how much I have to say about this as far as gameplay goes, but it's a really cool environment setup, right? Again, you know, the first thing it is that I think is, what is this telling the player? Is this an area where they can platform? You know, can they platform from each one of these areas? Maybe. You know, it definitely looks like there is some sort of light indication in these areas, right? So that may be it, or this may be something it is that the player just passes by. There looks like there's some walkable areas over there. But the things it is that connect with me is, you know, you have like these rule of three sort of thing going on. You know, you obviously have these kind of broken up areas where the player could possibly explore. And we have these broken up sheets that are telling the player something, right? And this looks like some sort of a landmark that the player is supposed to connect with, right? So there's some sort of a flag here, there's this, right? Yeah, I mean, the designs of this stuff is just, it's really rad. The amount of time it is that these guys put into doing these level designs. I mean, if you look at this, you can tell that there are several artists that are doing a pass over something like this, because this is an intense amount of work. But the amount of storytelling that's going on in these environments is pretty cool. Like, I love all this, you know. You can see how they're using different elements, like these these shapes, these triangle-like shapes, which are very bone-like, right? And we see them everywhere. We see them on the heads here, which is really cool. Like these heads have like these altars in front of them. But then we see these same bones put throughout the level, right? And they're used in all sorts of different ways. Like that's really cool. They're using them as basically framing devices. And then you even see that same thing carried over in the metallic kind of shapes here, right? They're not all the same size. They look almost like clips or something, you know? Same thing here, right? And these are clipped down. Right, you have another repeating element, which is something like this, which makes you think, is this some sort of a save spot? Is there something of interest here? Because you have this sort of thing. Yep, pretty cool. All right, we got just a couple more. Again, there's like these contrasts of lights and contrasts of elements that are pulling the player through the environment. There's also a lot of visual interest going on, and that's something it is that you can really see the power of having like multiple artists on a project and doing passes over stuff, where one guy does the concept design, another guy does the modeling, somebody else comes through and does the lighting and texturing and visual effects, because you have all these different elements, these lights, for example, that are creating visual interest and getting the player to move through the environment. Let me close some of these out real quick. All right, and so yeah, now we're getting into somebody else. This is Jesse Cooper. Hold on, let me close out John's stuff. Oh wow, that's another really cool one by John. Yeah, these guys are super talented. Again, you know, you have this, we'll just look at this last one from John and then we'll move on to Jesse. But again, you know, you have the same sort of thing that we looked at earlier. You have you're breaking up a straight path, right? So if the player is coming from, I don't know, he's coming from here and we need him to go here, or maybe the other way around, maybe he needs to go down here and he's coming from here. Or what it looks like is actually they're coming from over here and maybe they're hitting this door and realizing that it's locked and then they got to go down here to this area. Either way, you could see that there is a deliberate attempt to break up you know, these kind of straight line paths, because if it was just like this, it would just be boring, right? But instead, you have something that's a little bit more similar to the one it is we looked at before, where you have this major shape in the middle that's creating this element of visual interest and is creating the geometry of this level, right, which is an interesting shape. And so it's creating this kind of circular rhythm that drops down over here. And then you're also kind of getting this idea that I'm going to return back through here, possibly. You know, maybe this is like basically a workaround. This is basically where you go through the level and then you come around this way and come back in through this door. Right. So yeah, on to Jesse Carpenter. Yeah, I mean, like, this stuff is really next level. Again, you know, we have these elements of visual interest, and notice that there's that contrast of color, right? Everything is basically blue. The whole environment is saturated in this blue outside of the yellow and the green that are kind of pulling the person through here. Again, it's the same thing. And you can think that, like, this is obviously a decision it is that they are making For one, to draw the player's attention somewhere. So this blue light right here is definitely drawing our attention to whatever this is. And it's also drawing our attention over here as well, because there's basically like these spotlights, right? So there's like a spotlight of activity, and then there's this whole area where the player is traversing through, and then there's another spotlight of activity, and you could say maybe this one is another one as well, right? So they're using these contrasting elements of light, these spotlights of contrasting light, to draw players to them. And then they have this green light that basically saturates the whole level. Right? Again, same sort of thing. Where is the attention going? You know, I mean, clearly the player's coming from up top into this area, or is leaving this area, but it feels like they're entering into it. Yeah, I mean, again, you know, you have like these awesome designs of these pillars. I mean, these pillars look like they're bandaged together with bones. It looks like there's bones that are attached and just like wrapped around the pillar. I think that's really cool, and I think it shows the amount of thought it is that they put into this idea, right? You know, they have like these shapes, they have like these bone shapes, and obviously they have this mythology that somehow, like I said, I don't know anything about Darksiders. I've never played it or anything, but you can tell just from the way it is that they do the visual design that you can see the storytelling elements there, right? So obviously there's something going on with like worshiping these giant creatures' heads, these skulls, right? So there's a ritualistic element to it. There's an element of like sacrifice. There's scrolls down here, so that's telling you something about spells. You know, it could be witchcraft. It could be forbidden knowledge. So you start thinking about like Lovecraft, this sort of thing. And then you see these other skulls, and so you think there's been many sacrifices that have happened here, and they've all been paid tribute to this giant-headed creature here, right? And then they take this same concept, and it almost feels like, what it feels like to me is this is a ruined castle or crypt or something, and in order to keep up repairs with the place, instead of having instead of having the bricks that were used to build the structure to begin with, at some point the structure began to fall apart, maybe because of some cataclysm, maybe because these things showed up and they started to destroy everything, or maybe some sort of an earthquake. But after they were killed, what happened? Their bones were used in order to wrap around these pillars to keep support, right? That's what I'm talking about. Like, this is the storytelling elements. They carry through everything, from the color choices to the level designs to the assets that the levels are made of, right? Again, this feels like some sort of sacrificial something, right? And these props here to the side are very much in line. All of the assets here are in line with what we talked about earlier, including these gates back here. You can see the same sort of design. I mean, the way how symmetrical this is and how sharp it is, it almost feels like this is the face of the monster, right? Like if you put two eyes on this side, on that side, you could almost say like this is the nose, and you could say like this is the teeth, right? You can almost start to see a face here, right? And like these are the horns, something like that. I'm telling you, they're thinking about all this sort of stuff, right? Again, you see all these different makeshift walls and things like that made out of bone, right? This one's really cool. Again, we have this repeating element. This repeating element of the player moving around something circular and then moving inwards, right? So maybe the player is starting up here somewhere. They came from up here, jumped down, and they're making their way down somehow. And where do they end up? They end up here, and they're going into a place. So there's this kind of idea of like constantly circling around to a place until you go into it. These are some of Jesse's ideas for some of the environment designs. Some pretty cool vignettes. Now this is Baldy Konigen. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. This guy, I'm going to have to close out this other guy's work. So yeah, you've got these trims, these textures and stuff like that he's drawing, and you can see the way it is that he's using different things. He's got different motifs. He's got the forest temple motif, and he's done a design for that. He's done one for the sky, and he's done one for the water. And then he's basically basing those around what it is that he's doing. And this one's beautiful. I mean, this one has kind of like a religious tone to it with the cross, right? There's a lot of somewhat religious imagery here with these crosses. And it's a great way to break up a form. But when it comes to the textures themselves, they're all symmetrical, right? And there's a reason for that, because they're going to be laying on possibly asymmetrical environments, right? So this is something he did for Wayfinder, I believe. Yeah, I don't think this is Darksiders, but this is still Airship Syndicate, I believe. And, again, you just see a level of design with everything it is that he's doing. The doors, the environments, you can see where he drops the textures in here. You can see how it is that they plan to move the character around in the environment. The different things it is that they're using to kind of guide the player's eye. You have repeating elements of things, like with these gold circular trims on things, right? Something like this, or like this here, right? Notice the design here in this top one. You can really see the designs here, right? You've got this going up and then stopping and then going up, and then you have over this bridge, but everything around it almost looks like some sort of an armor design. And obviously it would be consistent with the other designs it is that he's done that I showed previously. Right? And then you have these other elements that are guiding the player around, like these blue fires, right? And then you have this. You have these gold trims. So you have these gold trims on the ground with these blue fires in these kind of holders that are being held by statues or just in these giant bowls, right? Again, more of this kind of idea of how you're going to move the player around. You going up. See, they got a player character right here. So they got him going like this in a circular pattern. And then we even have the notes here. The platform going up. And then he shows the breakdown of it. So he's showing... Oh, wow, that's really interesting. So there's like a platform that is now ready for liftoff. Water rises, and then it takes the player up, which is interesting. right? Again, you see these contrasts between these different elements. You've got this thing going on, really cool. Yeah, so you can see that there's elements of contrast with each of these concept artists' work, and each one of these breakdowns, you can see that there's definitely like key areas or key things that they're illustrating, right? You know, you have something like this where the player's passing over something, which creates a lot of visual interest. You can see they go up the stairs and they come up here and then they cross over. Very cool. You see these kind of arena type areas, again, very circular. So yeah, these guys are super good. Anyway, I think I'm finally getting to the end of this. This has been kind of a long video, but this was partly for the guys that I'm working with, just to review some stuff, but also this might be of use to somebody who is doing anything, even if you're just doing comics or you're doing your illustration work or whatever it is that you're doing. Understanding design and how it carries through in everything can only help you and make you a better artist. And so I think it's really useful to always look at different artists, what they do, how different artists solve different problems. You know, you can see breakdowns of these sorts of structures down here at the bottom. So yeah, I included all the links to the artists in the description box below. If you would like to support what it is that I do here on this channel and you'd like to see some maybe exclusive stuff, I've got a Patreon. I've also got my website with different stuff to check out. Link in the description box. And thanks, guys. Take care.